The world of solo leveling shows how quickly humanity can adapt to new, difficult conditions. For how else would you describe a situation in which one day gates leading to dungeons begin to appear everywhere and monsters resistant to modern weaponry start pouring into the streets? Yet, despite many losses, people managed to stabilize the situation with the help of hunters, those few who awakened and decided to fight the new threat, essentially becoming the most important industry in the world. However, what if everything that happened on Earth wasn't just a coincidence, and its inhabitants weren't the heroes of this story, but rather its accidental victims? At this point, I'd like to ask you, which solo leveling plotline is your favorite? I also want to warn you about spoilers for the rest of the story. But getting to the point, Ashborn, as the strongest of the rulers, was a key figure during the eternal struggle between two opposing forces that had been clashing since the moment light and darkness were separated by the absolute being. And so, while the monarchs as darkness desired to destroy the world, the rulers as their opposite were tasked with protecting it, standing by their creator as their disciples and fulfilling their commandments with their blood and lives. However, even after eons, their conflict remained at a stalemate with no chance of victory for either side. Therefore, one of the rulers turned to the absolute being with a request to grant them the power to defeat the enemies of light and end this senseless bloodshed. But their creator remained indifferent to these requests, leading the protectors of the world to realize they were merely pawns for the amusement of a god who had no intention of ending the eternal conflict.
Wanting to change things, the rulers took matters into their own hands and began a rebellion against the absolute being. The only one among his strongest disciples who tried to stop this coup was his most devoted divine servant, Ashborn, the greatest fragment of brilliant light. Unfortunately, compared to the united armies of the other fragments of light, his soldiers were few, thus he ultimately lost, left for dead at the hands of his kin. As he awaited his end, he discovered that the Creator had hidden a power within him, through which he rose stronger than before. As the Shadow Monarch, he set out with his new army to stop the rebellion, but it turned out to be too late. The absolute being was dead. Soon after, the rulers proclaimed themselves the new gods, and using the power of the one who brought them to life, they captured one of the monarchs, Legia, which threw the balance of power out of whack. Aware of this situation, Ashborn, now the king of the dead, decided to ally himself with those who desired to destroy the world. As their only hope, he was accepted by them, but as the situation on the front stabilized, both sides of the eternal conflict began to fear him. This was especially true for the monarch of destruction, Antares, who ordered two other monarchs, Beru and Rakon, to get rid of their new ally. Even though they took advantage of a situation where the king of the dead had just finished a battle with the ruler's army, the two monarchs were defeated. While the beast monarch, Rakon, still had the strength to flee, abandoning his own soldiers, Beru was left to Ashborn's mercy. Ashborn demanded to know why he was betrayed, but Beru remained stubborn, refusing to name the one whose orders he followed, and only mocking the commander of the Shadow Army, which ultimately cost him his life. And although the king of the dead was undoubtedly victorious, he did not emerge from the battle unscathed, and his army was nearly annihilated. Meanwhile, the fragments of brilliant light appeared before him, and despite their advantage, they asked for their former comrades' forgiveness and for the fighting to stop. Ashborn, despite knowing he was a pawn in the divine clan, remained devoted to his creator. Hearing that betrayal didn't come easily to the other fragments of light, the Shadow Monarch exploded in anger, telling them to pierce him with spears as well, since that is the reality and victory they so desperately sought. However, all the rulers simply paid him homage, asking for his forgiveness. Overwhelmed with emotion, Ashborn decided to withdraw from the front to rebuild his army and eventually take revenge on the traitors. This allowed the rulers to triumph, forcing the remaining monarchs into hiding. After some time, with Antares' consent, Ashborn rejoined the monarchs who had fled through a dimensional rift, but they were forbidden from fighting until their forces were restored. Soon, they found a suitable world, Earth. Across various alternative timelines, humanity was always destroyed, regardless of who won, because the planet's inhabitants could not survive the clash of such powerful beings. To fix their mistake, the rulers repeatedly turned back time by 10 years using the power of the Absolute Being, trying to strengthen the world and save at least a portion of humanity. Meanwhile, the monarchs, aware of the shifts in time, constantly improved their plans. In all this, Ashborn searched his place in the universe. Because of his immense power, he could not find a suitable vessel for years until he accepted an offer from the architect, who promised to find a human in exchange for an indestructible body. The architect created a system resembling a computer game to adapt a vessel to the Shadow Monarch's power. Eventually, Sung Jin-Woo was chosen, despite the architect's initial objections. Ashborn ultimately had no desire to take over the hunter's body. When the architect invited Sung for the final test at level 100, Ashborn protected him from the system's influence and passed on his black heart, betraying the architect because he had grown attached to the boy. After Sung suffered fatal injuries from the Beast Monarch, the two met in a world of illusions within him. Ashborn explained everything and gave Sung a choice: dream a beautiful dream forever or face the harsh reality. Sung chose reality. Ashborn, wanting only to rest, told Sung that they are now truly one and that Sung has gained absolute power. That's all for today. If you made it this far, let me know which series you'd like to see next on the channel. Until next time.